Welcome to Hope at Night, featuring Julián Melgosa. Q&A with our live audience and host, Anil Kanda. Today's episode, how can I improve my emotional intelligence and well-being? And here's your host, Anil Kanda.
The statistics on mental health are that 1 out of every 4 people are struggling. So if you look at your 3 best friends and they seem okay, it's probably you. We live in a world where levels of depression and anxiety are an all-time high. And so tonight we're diving into a conversation that everyone needs. How to find hope, healing, and peace in a world that can sometimes feel overwhelming. Our first guest tonight has dedicated his life to helping people understand the connection between faith, mental health, and emotional well-being. A former dean of the School of Education and Psychology, he's an administrator, educator, counselor, and an author of several books on mental and spiritual health. He has lived and worked all around the world, from Spain to the United Kingdom, the Philippines, and right now he is here in our studios. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Dr. Julián Melgosa. Why is emotional well-being so important to our health, our overall health?
Well, emotions are the spark of life, are the spice that bring life to connections. And it is very important to nourish those emotions. Unfortunately, whenever something goes wrong, then the emotional life gets affected. And that's when we become the wrong side of emotions. Anger and envy and fear are negative emotions. And those are associated to lack of mental health. So yes, emotional life is something that is as important to mental health as the heart of the lungs are to physical health.
Would you say it's true that our emotions affect us far more than we understand and know?
I think so. Most people are not aware of how their emotions are working. And that is why there is a relatively recent field that is called emotional intelligence, and everybody must have heard that expression before, and that is focused on how you reach control over your emotions, because they are so important.
Interesting. Speaking of emotions, can you define what exactly is depression?
Depression is an illness, it's a clinical mental disease that technically is called major depressive disorder, MDD, and it includes a number of symptoms that have to happen every day, most of the time of every day, for at least 2 weeks. Sometimes it can go for months or even years, but at least for 2 weeks. And if they do happen with that intensity for 10 days or more, I said for 2 weeks actually, 14 days or more, then it is diagnosed as major depressive disorder. That includes problems to concentrate, problems to with sleep, problems with hunger or lack of or excess of, and particularly a very depressed mood, a lack of desire to do anything, motivation, even for the things that one likes normally, doesn't want to do that, doesn't feel the motivation. So if 5 of those are present for 14 days in a row, then it can be diagnosed. Now, people talk loosely about depression, and that may not meet the criteria for the illness, but it still is important. If someone is sad continuously without motivation to do something, and it doesn't have a complete diagnosis, still needs support and help. And a few years ago, it came a term that is called minor depression, which is if you have half of the symptoms instead of a full syndrome. So it is, and it is very common.
It
yes.
could be the preliminary stages to full-blown
It
depression.
could be, or it could be just caused by some circumstance, and it will go away, and it will never develop into a proper illness as well. There are all
Doctor,
kinds.
in your opinion and research, do you think people are more depressed today than ever before? Or do you think we're just more aware of it now?
I believe that there are more light depression today than in the previous 50 years. But clinical depression is debatable. A full depression is debatable. The full depression requires pharmacology, and it's not as common as some people may think. Although it is in this country number 2. First one is anxiety, and the second is depression.
So it's number 2 in the United States.
Yes.
Out of are these, we consider them mental illnesses? Like, is that the category?
Yeah, right. Mental illnesses, number 1 in the USA is anxiety, number 2 is depression. In other countries, it's the opposite. Number 1 is depression and number 2 is anxiety. But it's universal, that those 2 are always at the top.
Why do you think that is for the United States?
Anxiety has to do with uncertainty. It has to do with fear, with insecurity, with not feeling comfortable about something, sense of apprehension for something that is uncertain. And I think society has been tough on this, with unemployment, with financial pressures, and
politics,
also expectations of society. From young people, they expect you are going to be the highest, you are going to be accepted into this great university. You have to. All that creates a sense of fear, of uncertainty, and that is all associated with anxiety.
Let's jump into this then. What changes can we make in our thinking that can improve our mental and emotional well-being?
That is a very important question, because when we talk about physical illness, almost everybody knows what to say. I have a little bit of a pain here. Oh, try with this product that I use, or this herbal tea, or, I know that my cousin had the same problem. Why don't you try? Mental health is a little bit more complicated. When someone has a mood that doesn't allow them to join groups, to be with people, to do their work, to concentrate, what do you do when you feel an obsession in your mind, an idea that doesn't go away? People don't know what to do that. And that's the reason why psychology, especially clinical psychology, counseling psychology, has been very insistent in teaching people in the counseling room, and also throughout what we call psychoeducation, to teach people how to deal with thoughts that are undesirable, and they are going to lead to mental illness. And this is something that we all have to learn. We don't have time here to go into all details, but to give you an example, self-talk. I give instruction to myself, and I say to myself, Julián, don't go that way. Don't think in the negativistic, fatalistic way. Just be more positive. It could be that way, but there are other options as well, and I tell that to myself.
Do you say it out loud?
I don't if I am with people, because I feel a little shy. But if I am by myself, I just say it aloud. Yeah.
I've noticed, last year there were moments I actually said things to myself out loud, and I was so thankful I said it, because it really helped and it encouraged me to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Self-talk is very important. So you mentioned self-talk. What else?
Well, you can do thought stopping, which is when a fearful...
Thought stopping?
Stopping, it's called, when you say stop to the chain of thoughts that are, that they are leading to the wrong path. And when you detect that cascade is coming early enough, when it's easier, you say to yourself, stop, okay? And then there are things that have to do with behavior. Physical exercise, for example, has been, in the last decade or so, has been found to have a huge positive effect on mental health. So organize your day, organize your schedule in such a way that you incorporate physical activity. It doesn't have to be a sophisticated sport, but activity. If at the minimum you can just walk fast, that will change your mood. There are plenty of studies that take an assessment before and after a 20-minute fast walk, and the mood can change in 20 minutes with an efficacy of some of the drugs, because of the chemicals in the brain that will secrete the kind of neurotransmitters that will enhance your mood. How do you do that? Through physical exercise and fatigue.
You're saying that exercise is just as efficacious as prescription medication these days.
That's a simple way.
That's great,
that's a simple way to say it, but there are specific pieces of pharmacology that in some studies, experimental studies, they have found that in certain patients it is as good as to have a half an hour session of a workout than what having or not having a medication. All right, but please do not take me wrong in this. Medication is very important. Psychiatric medication has saved lots of life from suicide because that is a practical implication of depression. Out of 3 suicides, 2 have to do with mental illness, and of those 2, most likely one of them has to do with depression. The other will have to do with substance use disorders. So it is important not to throw out the pharmacology.
Not to be black and white on this issue.
No, it is very important because any psychiatric treatment will have 2 components. One is the medication and the other one is the counseling or the psychotherapy. And psychotherapy actually will help cure the problem because it will teach you how to cope with your stresses. Pharmacology will not cure, but it will stabilize you in such a way that you will be better prepared to receive counseling or psychotherapy, and also it will protect you from behaviors such as hurting yourself.
The brain is so complex, it makes sense that there are definitely chemical imbalances that take place in which prescription medication is a necessity.
Correct.
In these circumstances.
Correct.
Now, I got to ask you, what role does gratitude play in improving our emotional and mental well-being?
Very, very high role. These kinds of conversations, when I took psychology, you can tell with my accent that I am not a native of the English language. My language is Spanish. I was born in Madrid, Spain, and I studied psychology in the 1970s and early 80s. In those years, you would not be allowed to say things like gratitude, hope, spirituality, religiosity. You just were not allowed. That's not scientific, all right? So if we would go to the professor to present a project of something and he had some components, and no, that's not good. This is a science. Psychology is a science, all right? That changed in the turn of the century, 2001. I went for the first time in Vancouver, British Columbia, to one of the conventions that we normally go yearly, psychologists. And for the first time, I attended the reading of a paper that it was about the effect of aspects like religion, spirituality, and gratitude. You have mentioned gratitude. That's a big one. The experiments go like this. You ask a group of people to write daily a number of things that they are grateful for. They write it out, they think about it, they even talk about them. You use that to compare with a control group that you simply tell them to write the things of the day in a diary. and then you assess the level of mental health and well-being and how they feel about themselves and about the world and about the future. And you compare those two groups, and the gratitude group scores significantly higher in well-being than the ones that have been simply writing about what happened during the day today. So gratitude is a huge component. So whenever we try to train persons to be more mentally healthy, one of the things we say with more or less detail, 5 things of the day that you are grateful for. You just name them. 5 things you will think of. There will be more even, but 5 things. Tomorrow, another 5 things. Those people will be more content, they will be more positive, and they will have a better relationship with their colleagues, family, friends.
That makes sense. Oftentimes we believe it's happiness that leads to gratitude, but what we're hearing is that it's gratitude that contributes to our happiness, just being in a spirit of thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
The Bible is full of lots of thanksgiving, people giving praise to God, adoration to God, thanksgiving to God. Do you see a relationship between people in Scripture who practice this thanksgiving and what the studies are showing?
In general, trust in God, it is seen as such. Talking about, you have mentioned depression. I can think of an episode in the Bible, which is the case of Hannah. Hannah, the mother of the one that would become Samuel, the prophet of Israel. His mother couldn't have children before he was born for whatever reason, and she was having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 symptoms of depression. She was dejected, she was crying, she was desperate. The language in the story gives that to such a point that you could actually diagnose with that. I mean, it's not the language of today, but you could. And how she loses appetite as well, which is one of the symptoms. Right. She doesn't eat, and her husband said, "Well, why don't you eat? Am I not better than 7 sons? You are desperate because you cannot be a mother, but I'm your husband and whatnot." But there were complications there. There was another wife. This was a polygamous family, and that wasn't good because the other wife could have children, and that was teasing her. Well, in the middle of all this, she goes to pray, and she just opens up to the Lord and starts praying. And the priest that is looking says, "You are drunk because I see you moving your face, your lips. That's not good." And then she said, "No, I'm not drunk. I am just pouring my heart to the Lord for all these things that are happening." And that is therapeutic in the sense that she opens up, the priest prays for her, she prays, and eventually even she will be a mother. But even before she is a mother and she knows that she is a mother, then she goes, the text says, and then she goes back to eat again. In other words, there is a moment there that because of prayer, because of trust in God, because of the support of an individual that at the beginning was suspecting that she was drunk, and there is the healing. So that's a story.
You see this restoration that takes place. Yeah. You talked about gratitude. You talked about these other tools that you can incorporate. You talked about self-talk. You talked about exercise. Prayer is something you just mentioned as something. Is there anything we can add to our daily routine that would keep us positive and have a healthy mindset?
Well, there's 2 groups of things. One has to do with the mind, and this that you have mentioned would qualify. Prayer is, and there are studies that communicates peace. A prayer of faith makes the person feel better, more relaxed, more trusting. A hopeful attitude. Obviously, the future is not known. We can have 2 approaches to the future. Oh, everything is going to be catastrophic. This is never going to be solved. And the other one that is, well, I don't know, but I trust and I hope that it will be better. All right, I lived in the Philippines for almost a decade, and I was amazed at that people how hopeful they are, in the sense that in September, October, there will be the typhoon season, and there was destruction, not every year, but many years. And you would talk to people who had lost their home, and they would say, I would say, well, I'm so sorry what has happened. This is very, very awful. And they said, tomorrow will be better. Wow. I mean, when I heard anything like that from someone that had lost everything that they had, that was a lesson, to those of us that have much more than we need. So this hopeful attitude, that is So this is one family, your head, how you work on your positive thinking, on you direct your thoughts in the ways that are elevating, and so on. The other family has to do with interactions. A good connection with someone that cares for you, and furthermore, a connection of you that you care for others. That is central in mental health. If you can get a teenager that is beginning with problems of depression to volunteer to a service of a community that has been hit by a catastrophe, or they are in trouble and they need muscle there to help, whatever, you will have done a great deal of good for that. Why? Because a connection, a human connection in there. People go to the pub to drink, but it's not just the drink, it's the social connection. We don't need to go to a pub, because if you go to a pub for the social connection, but then you drink, then you're affecting your mental health, because alcohol is detrimental for mental health. If you are prone to have mental health problems and you drink alcohol, it's going to make it worse. So you don't need to, but you need to find a group of people that you will be listening to, and you will listen to them, and it will be a nice environment. That is a healing element in mental health. So you work on your head, you work on your relationships, and you've got pretty much everything
formula
covered. Yeah.
Doctor, this is so fascinating. I know we have much more to talk about. We've just had an inspiring conversation with Dr. Julián Melgosa on emotional well-being. This has been powerful, but we're not done yet. After the break, we'll talk about the power of hope and why it matters and how it can transform your life. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us on Hope at Night. Thank you. Welcome back to Hope at Night. We've been talking with psychologist Dr. Julián Melgosa on emotional and mental well-being. Doctor, you talked about emotional intelligence in the previous segment. People accuse each other of having a lack of emotional intelligence, especially in regards to romantic relationships. But let's unpack that. What exactly is emotional intelligence?
Emotional intelligence is a great contribution, because it added what it was missing to the conventional historic intelligence. Intelligence used to be considered the IQ. The ability that people have to reason out to solve problems, but not to do anything with emotions. The contribution of emotional intelligence came and said, look, the human being is not just about intellect. It is also a very strong component there that are emotions. But emotions not in a loose way. Emotional intelligence was defined with a number of pillars that are important to build up emotional intelligence. Knowing my emotions, knowing how I feel when someone provokes me, knowing what is my likelihood to react in one way or another, knowing that is very important. It's very important for my well-being, it's very important for relationships. So being able to detect emotions in others, this is another element of emotional intelligence. So much so that people who are successful in jobs, they are successful not necessarily because they are high professionals. They have to have a minimum, an acceptable level. But then from there on, The success doesn't come because you are a good developer or a good nurse. No, it has to do with your skills that you have to deal with your emotions and the emotions of others. That's what employers like. Someone who looks for peace, not someone that is trying to bring war to the workplace, you know. This has to do with emotions. Emotional intelligence has to do with empathy. These days, in the language of people, you know, so-and-so is unable to show empathy because it has been discovered that empathy is crucial in personal satisfaction, in relationships, and in success. Emotional intelligence is made up of that element as well. And also social interactions. How capable you are to make connections with people, to make friends, and to maintain your friends, right? There are people that naturally are not good at that. And you see them that they go through friendship and another friendship and they end up very quickly. They don't know how to preserve a friendship. They don't know how to make the other feel better, which is part of empathy.
Doctor,
Well,
I've got to ask you, can you actually improve emotional intelligence?
Absolutely.
Or you're either born with it or you're not?
No. That you see, there are you know, the intelligence in the classic manner. We used to say that no more than 20% you can vary. The other 80% is set. All right, because you know, that raw intelligence. There are individuals that have more than others, but emotional intelligence is much more plastic. It's much more flexible. And yes, you can learn. You can learn how to identify the emotions of others and how to react to them and how to be supportive, and those things can be learned and can be put in practice.
What's one way to learn? What's one way to increase or improve your emotional intelligence?
Listen to people. One example.
Learning to listen.
Is just to listen. You know your friend that is blah 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 blah. They talk, and whenever you mention some, oh, by the way, I had the same experience, and boom, they start talking. You know.
By the way,
that's against emotional intelligence.
I have plenty of friends like that, and you know who you are. Go ahead.
So this is one way, for example, to increase. You know, you listen more to people. You learn about yourself. You note down, you know, some of the homework assignments for people who are under psychotherapy is whenever they have a feeling, they have a little notepad, and then they just write the day, the time, and how they feel, they experience the emotion. That helps them to analyze over a week what are the most common moods, you know, emotional states that they have had, how to regulate it. You know, emotional regulation is something that can be learned through your thinking, because thinking and emotions are intimately related. You know, if you feel a lot of pity for yourself, you're going to be emotionally low because you are feeding that kind of thinking. If when you catch those thoughts, you say, no, let's go into a different path. You train yourself to think more positively, your emotional condition improves immediately, really.
Doctor, does the Bible talk about emotional intelligence? Did Jesus have high emotional intelligence?
The Bible lays principles that have to do with emotional intelligence as we understand it today. When we see a Jesus that it is interacting with people, is listening to people, is interested in what their needs are. Jesus was not interested in his own needs. You know, he came to serve. So that is a very good example of what can one do to improve emotional intelligence as we understand it today. Because emotional intelligence is to read the feelings and emotions of others, to know mine, to put mechanisms in place so that you display this empathy, and to be able to improve the connection, the relationship. And the Bible is full of examples like that. You can see evil people in the example, that they can care less. You know, I just think of this guy who refused to help King David when he was with his warriors in a mountain there, and he sent his men and said, ask, I forgot the name of the character.
Nabal.
Yes, Nabal. He sent them there, and this Nabal goes and said, hey, you know who is this king there that is not acceptable by his people, whatever, forget it. He just refused. And a result of that was almost, thanks to his wife that mediated, but almost was killing several dozens of people just because of that. This Nabal didn't have any idea on what emotional intelligence it was. He didn't want to listen. He didn't want to understand. He did not even he was not wise to realize that those people out there had been helping his own shepherds and so on. And he could show a little bit of willingness to help. The language of David is, give to your son, and he specifically calls himself to your son, like submission to this wicked guy, and give whatever you have there. And then he said no. And that's a negative example. So we have characters that are for and against emotional intelligence.
Yeah, and I really like these examples you're pointing out in Scripture, and even Jesus, we see that he had empathy, he had these social skills, he listened, he was aware. You see that really exemplified in the life of Christ. Let's switch gears a little bit. You've been in the field of psychology for a number of years, written books on it, I'm sure lectured on it. What would you say is the most up-to-date research, in regards to the most up-to-date research in the field of psychology? What is it telling us about this generation?
This generation has less verbal abilities. They have less of the social connection face-to-face, but they are higher in the interaction through the devices, the electronic devices, in such a way that they could have a better communication with other people through the texts and the social media and so on than we, because we are accustomed to just talk to person face to face. It will come the point when they will have to face that. They will make a special effort, and they will manage.
I read a book recently, and it talked about people who have sort of a low hope perspective on life and those that have a high hope perspective on life. And high hope people tend to have more drive, better connections in their relationships. It doesn't mean there's this false positivity, but it does mean that their outlook is different, and it seems to contribute to their vitality and success in many areas of their life. How does one become a high hope person? What are some things that will contribute to them having a greater hope in life in general?
Well, we were mentioning in passing a moment ago that hope is looking at the future with an attitude that it will be positive, in the sense that it won't be catastrophic, it won't be negativistic as a whole. Now, it is important that you have mentioned that a false hope in a way that you could be unrealistic, you could be deceiving yourself. That's not what healthy hope should be. Healthy hope should be, we do not know the future. We are believers, for example. Just to give an example of a style of person, a person of faith will have hope in the future. Why? Because I have had trouble in the past. I have trusted God, and God has helped me to go through. So I know that He will help me in the future. I don't know if I will have this big challenge, but if I do, He'll see me through. That is a great attitude. That is something that today in the counseling room, it is encouraged. When we train counselors, I worked in the state of Washington. My previous job before I came to this building, it was at the university training counselors. And one of the trainings was when you have a person, a patient, a counselee that is a believer, you respect that faith and you promote that. Why? Because it's been demonstrated that that is a element of mental health, to have a good hope. Previously, when I was a student, it was simply not allowed. Not allowed in the sense that most clinicians will blame religion for the problems that you have. So, oh, you belong to a religion. Are you a religious person? Well, let's just take a look at that. Because the hypothesis was that religion was responsible for creating guilt in you, for creating unreasonable behaviors that were associated to your beliefs and practices and so on. Let's just move that on. Not anymore. Not anymore. You are a believer. Let's work around that. You have faith in prayer. Let's pray. Maybe I don't know how to pray, because if the counselor is not a believer, but I am going to encourage you to pray, because I know that that's going to be good. So yes, that hopeful attitude in the context of religion is a very good one. And in general, hope is one of the most desirable emotions that one can have. There is a classic piece of literature that is from the Middle Ages, Italy, Dante Alighieri. You probably have heard the Divine Drama. The Divine Drama is a novel that he writes and describes heaven and describes hell. We know through the Bible that hell doesn't exist as such. Hell is just the tomb. But, literature and classical religion believes in hell. How does Dante describe hell? He doesn't emphasize eternal fire or anything like that. He has a big title at the entrance of hell. And he says, those entering these gates give up hope. That's it. The worst thing that Dante could think of, which would be hell, is a place where you do not have hope. That's the worst thing that you can have, lack of hope, because then there is no reason to live. And this is not just religious. This is just in general to keep hope. And you can cultivate that. You can think about that. And the person of faith has an advantage, I think.
Yeah, hope is so important. It affects not just us internally, it affects our relationships, it affects our workplace, it affects our education, our drive, our mental, our physical health. It just seems to affect every area of our life, and that's why it's important to have a hope that is centered and anchored in God, something that is enduring. I got one more question for you. What would you say to that person who doesn't have hope right now? For the person who feels hopeless, feels discouraged, and feels just broken, maybe a season of darkness. What words of hope would you tell them?
Well, I would try to find out what are the thinking patterns of that person. I would listen to them. What do they think whenever they encounter others, whenever they go to work, how they process whatever they observe. And I would try to teach them alternative thinking. I would try to say, well, that is a possibility. Have you thought of the economy not being as bad as you think is going to be, and the politics or whatever it is just making you hopeless? And I would try to offer alternatives, and especially asking them to provide alternatives so that they start thinking about what else they could think about. Getting together with people that are more positive in thinking about the future, it would be a good company as well. Whenever you go together with someone that it is all the negative sides, it's always somber about everything, it's better to find different company because it's not helping.
You absorb it.
So yeah, that is another way, to find. That's why group counseling works well, because you just learn from others if they are directed well in a group. So yeah, finding out thinking patterns, try to offer alternatives. And then from the religious viewpoint, I think it is a good thing to instill in people hope for the better. And in the end, the whole message of Christianity and other religions as well is salvation, is eternity. And what a better hope than knowing that we are living in a world that is quite imperfect, but in the end, God has a plan, has reserved a pathway to go and meet with Him.
Right.
That is the supreme hope. Not everybody is willing to go that step, but those who are will benefit.
Right. Hopelessness doesn't come from God, because He's not called the God of hopelessness. He's called the God of hope. That's how Scripture what Scripture paints and tells us in the New Testament. Doctor, thank you so much. This has been really insightful. It's fascinating to see the steps we can make in improving our emotional and mental health. It's also good to know that hope isn't just wishful thinking. It's a powerful force that can change your life. Before we go to our next segment, I want to invite you to visit our website at hopetv.org/hopeatnight to download this season's free gift, so be sure to check it out. When we return, we're handing the mic to our studio audience for their questions, so don't go away. Welcome back to Hope at Night. We've been talking about emotional and well-being and the power of hope, and now it's your turn. We're opening the floor to our audience. What questions do you have for Dr. Melgosa? Right over there.
Yes, so my question is, can anxiety and depression be hereditary?
Yes, they can, especially the most severe cases when someone is very, very severe in the manifestation of the disease. It has a higher chance to pass on to the next generation. That are genetic components. The mild one, I think, is more attributed to, in both cases, to environmental conditions that happen around. But yes, there are genetic processes that it is not an automatic thing. Please, oh, my father suffered from depression, I must go. No, it's not like that. But yeah, there are more chances in both.
And if it's hereditary, does that mean it's a lifelong prison sentence?
Well, these illnesses, they have moments of onset. So sometimes it may be that it comes in adolescence, sometimes it may not come until adulthood. You're not going to feel anything until it comes. And at that time, an important thing is to be aware if one has genetic factors, just like the doctor asked you, is there any of your parents or grandparents had heart disease? Well, mental health, it goes also like that. Very good advice. Whenever there is history in a family, don't use alcohol. Don't get into areas of people that get into problematic behaviors, bad companies, and so on, and try to keep a good mental health. This is all preventive, that it could avoid the manifestation of the illness.
Really practical. Any other questions? Right over there.
Can you please discuss the relationship between resilience and mental health?
Well, it is a very good relationship, because the person that has learned to be resilient, it's going to be protected against mental illness, because resiliency means that whenever there is trouble, you have trained yourself to overcome and to go through it and come out with further strength. That is the antithesis of mental illness. So yeah, they are intimately related. Yes.
How do you develop resilience?
Practicing, taking things as challenge rather than the things that are going to defeat. Something comes in your way and you say, look, this is like a game. I'm going to crack this one. Take it with humor, take it with persistence, search for help, we oftentimes go by ourselves, to face something. Go to your spouse, your friend, your colleague that you trust, and get ideas on how to do that. It's a practicing. Yeah.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
How can the use of psychiatric medicines affect one's ability to listen or adhere to the Word of God?
Great question.
Psychiatric medicine is good to stabilize when you have a mental illness. If you don't have mental illness, pharmacology is not for you. No one should take an antidepressant just because I want to think in one way or another. But for the person that has the illness, yes, it can stabilize it in the sense that the imbalance of chemicals, neurotransmitters, hormone connections, are in such a way that you are more balanced in your analysis of things. You're going to be more calm. You're going to be less impulsive. And that is the way that you will go into that step with the support of pharmacology, but only for those people that can use it. Please don't take that this is just, pharmacology like aspirin. No, it's psychiatric medicine is a very complex thing. A very complex thing. Sometimes it doesn't work, and then the psychiatrist will try something else, and it takes weeks till you find out whether it works. It's a complex thing, But yes, if you find the right kind of chemical that will bring balance, it's helpful. Yeah.
And God doesn't cut himself off from us in the process of us,
Yes.
throughout that whole experience. Whether we feel God's presence or we don't, God doesn't operate by what we feel.
Right. But this is an important question also to say that one category of psychiatric medicine is the one that will protect you from delusions and hallucinations. And if you are going to be protected from that, which is hallucination, is something that your brain tells you that it exists, but it doesn't. All right. If you can control that with medicine, you can have a better relationship with God in the sense that you will be able to pray, that you will be able to talk to God in calm, because the drug has helped you to muffle that undesirable effect of the psychosis, which is the hallucinations and delusions that come. So it can be helpful indirectly,
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. Is there a cure for major depressive disorder?
Yes, there is. This is something that anyone suffering from depression should know. About 25% of people, depression is a major plague in the world. Only 1 in 4 seek treatment. The rest don't. Just let it go. Many times it's from countries where there is no mental health services. But in countries that there is mental health services, many people don't go because they say that's for the crazies and I don't want to do anything with that. But the people who go, there are studies that show clearly that depending on the approach, depending on the study, between 75%, 85% of the cases are healed from depression if they seek treatment, which we have mentioned that has the two sides of it, which is the pharmacological and the psychotherapeutic approach, counseling and medical doctor. Yes.
Great. Any other questions?
Could you talk more about focus and impulse control as it relates to emotional intelligence?
There are people who have problems with this and come to counseling. It is interesting that people who have problems with controlling their emotions, they do it without knowing. They build up without warning, so to say. So someone who is nearby can alert them of what it may be coming. Okay, so my ability to read the emotions in the face of someone that is about to lose their temper, it's going to be helpful to cut it on time. I can think of a case of a couple that I dealt with, and he had a temper in such a way that he would destroy furniture. He hadn't hit his wife, but he was the one that would kick tables and chairs and things like that. And he wanted to have control, he just couldn't, right? And one of the things that we were trying to see is if the wife could tell in the face when that was coming. And she said, yeah, I can read that. I can read when it's coming, you know. And there we agreed that whenever she had that moment, she would warn with a key word that we thought of, you know, a secret word that she would say. And whenever she said it, because he was willing. He was not one of these saying that would deny it, because some people deny that they have. But no, he wanted to solve the problem. And this helped them because he was alerted before it blew out, you know, and it was manageable. Once he had reached a point, he couldn't manage it anymore. So if that lady had not had the ability to read his emotions ahead, it probably wouldn't have been solved, at least in that way. So yeah, there is, yeah.
Any other questions?
How can I reignite my inner drive and motivation if I felt burnt out for years?
If you have been burned out for years, that is more difficult than if it had been just for a week, all right? But there is hope. There is hope. And I think that changing your environment will be the only way. Change it pretty radically. Being burnt out has to do with holding a difficult job, being in an environment that is adverse. Now, in order to find out what environment you are going to find and replace it with, that is a big challenge in there. But a goal would be to find a context that is different, to get out of there whenever possible. If your job, for example, were to be one that you could adjust, change, whatever, let's just look at that possibility. If it's a social context, you know, let's see if we can find at least temporarily other companies and see what it is. So I would think that the environment would be the crucial factor that would determine continuous burn down, and then changing that or adjusting that. It's a simple, oversimplifying answer, but of course, in order to find a solution like that, you would need a half a dozen counseling sessions with all kinds of detail. But yes, there are ways.
But that's a good perspective, right, is to be aware of your environment and to make adjustments there. Any other questions? Right there.
So I've always heard that there will be war and rumors of war until the end of time. How can someone have a good mental health if there's always a fear of that?
Well, you said it right. If it is always a fear of that. If there is a fear of that, you are in trouble, because the Bible says that there will be wars and rumors of wars, but the Bible says that there is hope, and then the Lord will be always with you. And there are texts like promises, like I will be with you. That expression, I will be with you, I don't know, the scholars have counted, but there are several hundred times that the message is portrayed, which means that someone who is really close to God will trust in God, and it won't be fearful, because it knows that those rumors of war, first of all, wars and rumors of wars doesn't mean that the war is there. It means that there's a lot of talk about it. Okay, and then one can have trust in God to say, well, it may not touch me, but if he does, the Lord is going to get me out of that. That kind of thought, I think it would be the crucial thing. Or else, yes, it would be pretty desperate to say, you know, always there's trouble, but I don't have a way out. Yes, there is a problem. I would think hope and faith are crucial in this. True hope and true faith, not just the alarm of saying, oh, rumors of war. I don't know if I have expressed
Right, excellent. I just appreciate your focus too, which is to have faith and hope in those kinds of end time scenarios that are presented in Scripture. And the hope is that Jesus still sits on his throne, and we can put hope and trust in him. He can overrule all things for his glory. Doctor, thank you so much for this very insightful discussion. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Tonight, we've learned that our thoughts, emotions, and faith all play a role in our well-being. Sometimes life feels overwhelming. Maybe you feel anxious, depressed, or hopeless. And if that's you, know this: you are not alone. God sees you. He wants to be there with you and offer you hope. He can help you through this with the help of community and professionals, and through promises in the Bible and prayer. If you want to learn more about how faith can bring you hope, visit hopetv.org/hopeatnight to download this season's free gift. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep seeking, keep believing, and keep holding on to hope at night.